I'd like to, first of all, thank you all for coming tonight. Feel free to come on in and get closer. It's a nice, intimate group we've got here. For those of you who don't know, my name is Will Waldron. I'm the Executive Director for Divine Mercy Care, and I'm more than pleased to see all of you here. This is a very special evening for everyone involved, and I want to thank all the volunteers who have helped with our registration, helped day in and day out at Divine Mercy Care, really pushing and advancing our mission. And our mission really quickly is threefold. It's to serve, and we do that by raising funds to underwrite the cost of care for women in need at Tepeyac Family Center. That's probably what you're most familiar with, many of you. And we also inspire and educate, and this is the portion of what we're doing tonight, and that is to educate those among this community about pro-life issues that are out there. And the third thing we do is unify, both locally and nationally. And what we're trying to do is locally and nationally unify the medical pro-life movement. And I think we'll all look around and agree that there's a lot of great pro-life causes out there that are working hard to respect life from natural conception to the natural death. And what we're failing to realize is that if we don't work together, we're not advancing it as fast as we can and as best as we can. So those are the three aspects of what we're doing. I want to introduce to you very briefly and very quickly Cheney Mullins, who's our development coordinator, and Mark Flores. Mark Flores is our business manager. Donna Johnson, who's in the back, very humbly helps us out in a number of ways, and I can't thank her enough for all the work that she puts in. And Sharon Zhang is around here in the office, right with us here, one of our communications people. We're certainly blessed to have all of the staff helping us. I also want to introduce to you a gentleman who's really made it his life work to advance the cause and advance heroically 30 plus years ago, and he'll tell you his story, but Dr. John Matowski has been an influential part of my family's life personally, was that reason why my wife as a single woman wanted to go to a pro-life doctor and wanted to have medical care that was in line with her faith, and how important that was to her and her confidence and her ability. And that's not to be underwritten or set aside. It's such a vital aspect of who doctor is, and all the doctors. Dr. Fisk, I see, is in the back, and his wife, Sue Fisk, who also work at Tepeyac. And Dr. Anderson, I know, is here, and Dr. Zavekovich. And we're very blessed to have these doctors. This is not a light undertaking that they take in every day. But just want to thank you all again for coming. And without further ado, Dr. John.
Thank you all so much. And I'm really here on this second educational lecture series sponsored by Divine Mercy Care and Tepeyac OB-GYN. I am representing my friends who are doctors and midwives and staff with us at the Tepeyac OB-GYN facility. I'm here with them, and I'm the opening act for Mrs. Lejeune. It's a privilege. So bonsoir, and beyond you, good evening and welcome. It's an educational conversation entitled Down Syndrome as a Pro-Life Cause. And it's really featuring Madame Birthe Lejeune, the wife of the renowned doctor and geneticist and servant of God, Jérôme Lejeune, the father of modern genetics and the founder of the extra 21st chromosome causing Down syndrome. And so we, in our practice, have had the privilege of delivering Simon and Michael in the back, as they represent many of you. And we are so grateful that we are here tonight to begin a conversation about building on this foundation of love and care for all of our human family. So I've known about Dr. Lejeune since the late 1980s. And so in my psychosis, late at night when writing in my diary, I kind of whisper to Brother Jérôme. And I say it out loud sometimes, and it catches myself. I say, you know, Jérôme, you and I married up. Birthe is Danish, Carolyn is Czech. They both love the ocean. They both grew up near the ocean. We definitely married up. He, Dr. Birthe Lejeune, has been an inspiration and hero of mine since then. And I met this larger-than-life but humble scientific giant in 1989. But I'm going to talk about that in a minute. For any of you who want to know more about him, the man in the family, Life is a Blessing was written by their daughter, Clara, in 1997. So tonight we have a conversation. Tonight we have the privilege of having a conversation with his milieu moti, his better half. She's here with us tonight to give us an insight into their life, fighting for the dignity of their patients, while also seeking the cure for trisomy 21, Down syndrome, which he discovered the cause of in 1958. Can you imagine? And he spent a whole year, Mrs. Lejeune, Madame Lejeune spoke to us about today. He spent a whole year, Canada, the United States, showing people, this is what it is. They shrugged their shoulders. 1958, 1960, think about our country at that time. So, merci beaucoup to our visitors from Paris. Merci beaucoup to our audience, coming from many states, many places tonight. And also merci beaucoup to Dr. Jérôme, incarnationally and vicariously through his better half, Madame Lejeune, coming all the way from Paris. We need to continue to pray for her. She's going to be in Miami at the end of this week. And as she mentioned to me, that when she stares at his picture and those beautiful blue eyes on his refrigerator, she continues to say, you know, Jérôme, you left us a lot of work to do. So, as many of you know, my name is John Matowski, and I come from Iceland. But I'm going to explain that here in a minute. I'm a 57-year-old OB-GYN, married to a wonderful lady, with two tremendous boys, some who I've been trying to pawn off tonight to people in the audience. We believe in arranged marriages at our house. I wanted to be an excellent, competent, and qualified OB-GYN. I have the privilege of working with men and women in my practice who have the highest of educational standards. And we've all gravitated through the grace of God to work at Tepeyac OB-GYN, formerly known as the Tepeyac Family Center. We all wanted to eradicate disease. So I had to provide what women wanted, right? So during my residency, I performed abortions on demand. They asked, I did it. And that included on some normal kids who had a strange and a slightly abnormal genetic screen, even with those who've had disabilities. So I can't throw stones tonight because I've been on both sides of this issue. But I now have the privilege of working at Tepeyac OB-GYN. There's 5 other professionals there, 5 docs, 1 midwife, and a staff of 18. We provide care for women, pregnant and not, women in crisis pregnancies, care for the menopausal, care for the teens, good surgery, cooperative hormone replacement, integrated health care, body, soul, and spirit. I remember many years ago, Dan Fisk and I talked about some of the data because I was presenting at Congress on Down syndrome, the genetic testing that was being pushed earlier and earlier. And we kicked that around in the office on our Tuesday meetings. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, care, not cure always, but care and curing while we're attempting the cure, is the answer to the abomination of ending the lives of sick children in the wombs of their mothers. We must all, and we are, just by your presence here, just by these moms that continue to build families and love unconditionally, This is the sign of contradiction and the witness to the truth. That's the inspiration that was, for me, lived out by Dr. Jérôme and his lovely bride. He was the most renowned geneticist in the world. He spoke for the United Nations on the radiation effects on genetics. He received the Kennedy Prize, 1962. And at a very big meeting, he basically presents his belief that we shouldn't end their lives. Like we should try to cure them so they can grow up to be geneticists and treat themselves. That's him. He was taken out. He was taken out that evening. He comes off, and rather than caring, this was the eugenic ending of the lives of children with genetic conditions in the wombs of their mothers, and that night cost him the Nobel Prize. He spoke at the highest levels of science in the world until he was marginalized and persecuted. He and his wife truly lived the 15th chapter of John's Gospel. We're all part of the vine. We're all part of the vine. We get pruned, right? But to have full joy, you got to follow the commandments. So we must love as he loves. That's what Dr. Birthe Lejeune taught me. That's what his wife teaches us today. If they hated him, they will hate us. It's kind of a reality. I will lead you to all truth. He was a true witness to truth in today, in like 1990, 1980, 1960, 1990. He died in 1994. So let me begin an example, because example is the best witness. Costly, but worth it. So let me just mention, why are we here tonight? Is Down syndrome as a pro-life cause? Well, current events dictate this, right? August 15th, 2017, a casually worded CBS news article depicts a horrifying reality. They reported earlier that month that Iceland is leading the world in eradicating Down syndrome births. The word is eradicating. Destroy completely. Put an end to. Destroy. Put an end to. Simon and the rest of you here, my heart goes out because you're not an endangered species, not as long as Dr. Lejeune and the people that follow him continue to breathe. One might be forgiven for assuming that Iceland had developed an innovative treatment for the chromosomal disorder. That's what they're doing in Paris right now. We were blessed, Marie and Lorna and Danny and Mary, we were blessed to have them with us today to tell us a little bit about the last 2 days, about what they're doing. It turns out, no, Iceland's solution is a lot simpler and much more sinister. They're using prenatal testing and abortion to systematically exterminate children with Down syndrome. Folks, this ain't progress. This is eugenics, and it's been around for a long time. I was a part of it. I know what that feels like on both sides. Prenatal testing is optional in Iceland, but the government mandates that doctors notify women of that option, just like we do in this country. About 85% of expectant mothers undergo that test, and close to 100% of those women choose to abort their child. This is what we do in America. This is what we do in Virginia. This is what we do in Fairfax County also. Remember, Pogo said, the enemy is us. I met the enemy and the enemy's us. It's me. My heart has to change. And if my heart can change, then other hearts can change. And one by one, we can help change this. So whether if it's Shaq running for Congress and whether it's, everybody here has a mission. Everybody here. This is what we testified, as I mentioned, with Danny, a congressional subcommittee several years ago. Our acceptance of this reality and the CBS article does little to accord the subject the moral gravity it deserves. Other countries aren't lagging too far behind in Down syndrome termination rates, they quote. They noted it casually. CBS's news tweet promoting the story read simply, Iceland is on pace to virtually eliminate Down syndrome through abortion. Eliminating by eradicating a problem, a disease. Are we supposed to be happy, cheerful, or horrified? I guess it depends on your worldview today. But Iceland isn't alone. Where Madame Lejeune is from, Denmark, where she was only born 30 years ago, 98% of pregnancies with Down syndrome diagnosis are terminated. 98. That's the same country that's held up as a standard where the depression rate is going through the roof and suicide's going through the roof, and happiness intervals are made up. Statistics are made up. In France, the home of the Institute, 77% end in termination. And in the United States, at least current data that I could find was 67%. This is what I mean I was Iceland. I'm Icelandic. I thought I was Polish. In Iceland, the law permits abortions after 16 weeks if the fetus has a deformity. That means about 2 babies every year in Iceland are born with Down syndrome. That's a population of 330,000 people. This is why Down syndrome is a pro-life cause, and this is why we're here tonight. This is why we try to have these educational conversations at Divine Mercy Care and Tepeyac OB-GYN. In the 1930s, we sterilized the feeble-minded. Carolyn and I have made visits to these buildings that are still up in southwestern Virginia that were the places where people from Europe came in the 1920s to find out how we were dealing with our feeble-minded. Yes, those centers in southwestern Virginia were where the Nazis came up with some of their ideas. In the 1940s, we gassed the vermin. In the 1970s, we aborted the unwanted. In the 1990s, we began to freeze and manipulate our youngest, only picking out the best to use, the healthiest, through pre-implantation genetic screening. It's by taking these early embryos and looking at their genes, right? In the new millennia, we are eradicating Down syndrome by destroying those who carry the extra chromosome that Dr. Jérôme discovered. That's why it's so important to come here tonight and listen to what Madame has to say. It is disgusting and disheartening only if you look at that end of it. But when you meet folks like this and like this, there's a new season of hope because there's care. And that care gets translated into witness. And then we can support your witness by your families who are in this auditorium tonight, and you're friends of ours. This is how you do this. This is how you change the culture. So what Dr. Jérôme taught me, you hate the disease but love the patient. This is the practice of medicine, he said. You don't get rid of diseases by getting rid of patients with those diseases, and medicine becomes mad science, he said, when it attacks the patient instead of fighting the disease. Make the diagnosis, Dan, Marie, John. You people travel long distances sometimes to come to our practice because you care that we care about the disease. Make the diagnosis. Don't over-medicate us. Don't pat us on the head. Collaborate with us. Be the best doctors you can be. That's what Dr. Jérôme was as a scientist. That's it. We must always be on the patient's side, he said. We must care and try to cure them in their innocence, or else there will be a new massacre of the innocents. Our intelligence is not abstract, he said. Reason is nothing without the heart. Once again, this is where Divine Mercy Care and the Tepeyac Family Center got these principles, transforming hearts through health care. You got to take the reason and make it come to the heart so we can love enough to make children welcomed and abortion unwanted. That's why the Tepeyac tagline is something more than medicine. So we shouldn't fear medicine, but the folly of mankind. I love that word, mankind, as a gynecologist. We increase our ability to change nature by using its own laws. We are certainly more powerful today than ever before, but we are no wiser. Technology is cumulative, wisdom is not. Be available to your patients, John, he said. He reminds me of that in the dark every night. Never keep them waiting. Long ago, medicine made a decision, and since then it has always fought against sickness and death for health and life. For even when nature condemns someone to death, our duty as physicians is not to execute the sentence, but rather to try to commute the penalty. The science of genetics tells us about the information inscribed in matter so well that this matter is no longer matter, but a new person. Think of personalized medicine. Think of 23andMe. Think of Ancestry on TV that's bombarding us every day, Find out who you are. That's what Dr. Lejeune was talking about in the positive, not in the eugenic sense. The genetic makeup is there at the moment of fertilization. People say the price of genetic disease is high. If we can eliminate them early on, the saving would be enormous. We can't deny that the price is high in suffering for the individual and in burdens of society and in what goes through parents' hearts when they hear the diagnosis. But we must assign a value to that price. It is precisely what a society must pay to remain fully human. These are his words. This is what he spoke to us about. We know that the enemies of life want to destroy a Christian civilization, and the first step is to destroy the family at its weakest point, the child in the womb. We are all family because we are all human, as he said eloquently and simply, because that was one of his gifts. In the beginning, there is a message, and that message is in life, and that message is life. We need to be clear, the quality of a civilization can be measured by the respect it has for the weakest. There's no other criteria, he says. Every patient is my brother or sister, because in the end, the reasoning that judges all things will judge us. As you did it to the least of my brothers and sisters, you did it to me. So 28 years ago, this past September, there was a Tennessee state court that granted temporary custody of 7 frozen embryos to the woman who produced the eggs before the couple got divorced. So this couple went through in vitro fertilization and they got divorced. Well, the court rejected the efforts of her estranged husband, whose sperm fertilized the eggs, to prevent them from being implanted in her womb. My residency program, my OB-GYN program, made those embryos for that Davis family. That was at the Jones Institute for Reproductive Medicine. I was there as a resident at the time. We, therefore, because of this case, instituted real informed consent after that. What do we do with the disposal or the use of spare embryos? Because before that, we did whatever the heck we wanted with them. My major professor, Dr. Howard Jones, was the expert on the side of the father who saw the embryos as property. Dr. Jérôme was the expert on the side of the mother who saw the embryos as children. I'm sitting on the other side of that issue, listening to that testimony. In his ruling, because of the testimony, the judge said that the Davis family were in fact, these embryos were in fact human beings existing as embryos, and that life begins at the moment of conception. That month, I remember sitting in a darkened academic lecture hall at Centera Norfolk General in Norfolk, Virginia, and we listened to Dr. Howard Jones speak about his creations, or our creations. They called them pre-embryos, a term he championed because he wanted to give the embryo intermediate status, not like an appendix, more than an appendix, but not the real love or not the real dignity of a full human person. We needed to learn and experiment on these embryos to figure out how life began in the womb. In order to do that, we had to change their moral status. So tonight, what are we going to learn from this witness of truth, Madame Lejeune? Tonight is about learning caring for the least of our brothers and sisters. How fitting today in our religious tradition, we celebrate the life of Luke, one of the writers of the good book, a physician. At DMC and TOB, we believe medicine's an act of mercy and good health is based on sacrificial, loving relationships, hating the disease and loving the patient. Are embryos that are made by the millions your property or your children? Are they owned or loved? Are children sexually transmitted diseases to be eradicated? Is fertility and life to be cared for and cooperated with? Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we're up against. This is why we're here tonight, to try this conversation on this issue, because this is where we're at as a people. At DMC, we want to help health professionals serve by caring for their patients more completely, more than people think is possible, to inspire younger healthcare students to enter the wonderful caring profession, and trying to unite the pro-life movement, which Will talked about. How do we build bridges? How do we unify as much as we can? At Tepeyac, we aim to care medically excellently. I would put the training of my fellow doctors up against anyone, anywhere, at any time. Well trained. Oh, no. At the Parisian Jérôme Lejeune Foundation and Institute, they are focused on care, research, and advocacy for the cure and treatment of patients with genetic illnesses. They have 9,000 patients and growing. They care for the child as a pediatric patient, as a tween, as a young adult, and as an adult. And we see this picture today of one of Dr. Jérôme's partners touching the face of a 50-year-old, 60-year-old that they took care of 60 years, a long time ago. Amazing. So tonight we're at a historical moment. I'm grateful for this opportunity for you all to be here and share Madame Lejeune with us. I would almost dare to say it's a biblical moment. We see this synergy between our center and their center in treating the disabled as part of our human family. It's an opportunity for patients and providers to be fully alive, in utero and out. As the world gets beaten down, this provides that hope that only something like this, caring for people like us, can happen. And it's inclusive, it's welcoming. So tonight, let us wake up and rather than stay silent or run away, as they kind of did in the garden many years ago, we can't be asleep now. Let us care for our sick and our vulnerable. We've kind of lost the meaning of life because we've lost the meaning of words. The merci beaucoup of deep gratitude to our God who has given us life and love has been lost, but can be found. The merci beaucoup of those who have gone before us, we need to remember them and honor them, and as he said, continue their work. The merci beaucoup found in families and communities that become real communion when there's that sacrificial love that every one of these families that I've been talking to tonight, that I've known, that we have known personally, it's our blessing. You have taught us so much. But it's also the mercy of medicine that makes it unthinkable to eradicate a fellow member of our family. Mercy killing, right? We say that word and the word is just, it's lost. What mother would not give all the time to spend with her sick child? What mother would not give more time? So tonight, let us relearn merci and mercy in our hearts for our immediate family and our work by listening to the love of Dr. Jérôme's life, his wife, Madame Birthe Lejeune, to speak about Down syndrome as a pro-life cause. So just to give a warm welcome, Northern Virginia welcome to Madame Lejeune.
I speak not very well English, but I will try to tell you how happy and honored I am to be here, to see all John Matowski's friends, and I visit his room this morning. You know, I knew him for a long time since, but we never met, so that's the first time. So that's a very big emotion. I'm here. And I'm asked to tell a little why Jérôme was interested about these children with Down syndrome. Where we were young and just got married, there was a professor in Paris who said, "Oh, I have some patients, they have a round head and the eyes like that. If you want to walk with me, so perhaps we can do something together. And when Jérôme saw these children, he said to me, I'm sure they are so nice, and I'm sure we can do something. But I remember that time in France, I don't know if it's so in America, the parent cast the children because there was something said, that's your fault. So you had syphilis, you are alcoholic or something, that's your fault. So the parents were ashamed, they never took their children out. So when he was had a big consultation with these children, they came more and more, and he said, there's something to find. The first thing, because sometimes when they were born, the doctors didn't know what happened because they couldn't say that they had. They said, your child is not normal. So he studied, and the first thing he found was the fingerprint. There is little things, that's not a big line, but little things here, so you can see when the hour after a child is born, if it's a Down syndrome. So that was the first thing, to find early out, to say very early that child has something. And then he was walking with me, he tried to tell the parents to take them out, to be proud of them. And I think already before, long time before the discovering, his patients came out and they learned not to take it in and something. But when he discovered the extra chromosome in 1958, he was thinking that now we know why they have a chromosome. So he was thinking that all the doctors over in the world would start to do research to acquire them. But all the government, not only in France, said it's wonderful because now we can detect them before they are born, and then end the life of a sick baby by abortion. So the government used all their credit research to detect them before, and they didn't give money. In France, they used 100 million of euro to detect them, but they didn't give anything to the research for the Down syndrome, and they still don't do it. So Jérôme was he was so sad when he saw that they want to kill his patients. So, you know, that's terrible for a man to see his discovery turned against his patient. So he decided to defend him. And when he started to talk, the battle was very hard. The student went away, his colleague were against him, and he was nearly alone. And he had no money to do his research. But little after little, he found new people, and now he could start again. And when the last day is his life, he knew he was dying. So he said he was very anxious to know who can continue my fight to defend and to try to cure these children, my patients. And I think that now I see here, I know what you have done for John Buchalski, so I think that you will be them who could help us to do something more for that children. And after he died, we made a little association, and the year after a foundation. And when you make a foundation, you have to say what you have in your status. And we said, perhaps find money to build houses to take care of these patients. But we say that exists, they are not enough, but they exist. And the socio-medical, that was the same thing. So we said, but we have to give money to the research, because the doctors want to research if they can have money to do, if they have not, they cannot. So our foundation is first research, care, and to defend. And the first year we made an appeal in Lancet Science and all the scientific papers. We have had only 5 persons who asked for money, and then 15, and now we have given money to, I don't know how many hundred, but many, and especially many American, to somebody in Canada and overall in Europe. So we hope that one day we will find something. But now we have to have doctors who can take care of them. Dr. John told about our consultation in Paris. That's now, it's, we started for 20 years ago, and now it's the biggest in Europe. We have so many patients, and we want very much that you should have the same thing here in the States. Yeah, I know you have some, but you have not clinic Jérôme Lejeune. So I think it should be good if you could have that. And
I would like to ask you guys a question. What can we do to help you more? Dr. Lejeune's, one of his famous words was that Jesuit phrase of more, magis. What else can we do better? I know many of you families have children with Down syndrome. Many of you are in the healthcare field, trying to serve, whether it's educational. But we would love to hear, what can we do? What services can we do better? And maybe that doesn't even answer right away, but I want you to know that afterwards, if it's not coming up to the podium here, please, we would be very interested in hearing that.
what is special in our consultation, that's the doctors who see the family, see them 1 hour or 1.5 hours. And that's possible because that's, of course, very expensive. But they can do it because the foundation finances the consultation. And it's very important to talk with the parents, to see all the little things they see, ear, and all, and to ask for the psychology, what can they do, what's possible they can do. You know, we have patients who are walking now, because before they were sure they couldn't do anything. And you know, in France, the doctors have not learned very much about genetics. So they see some things they don't that's not their fault, they never learn. And I give always an example. There are many other, but I do that because that was the first. So I had, that was a woman, he had a big boy with Down syndrome, and he was a very good boy. And certainly he was aggressive and he screamed, and the doctor in the little town in France said, sent him to the psychiatric hospital. And after some time the mother said, oh, I go to Paris to the consultation Lejeune. And they examined, because our doctors know that trisomy, they know they have pain, but they cannot say where. So they discovered that he had something in the ear, and he got some medicament, and in 1 week he was well. If not, he had been in a psychiatric hospital all his life. And there are many other things. Another used to say, the little girls who had a progressive, when they got women. What you say?
Puberty or menopause? Puberty, when they start their cycles?
No, when they are young, 80 years, and started a big breast.
Develop breast, yes.
What do you say?
Phelarc.
Yes. That starts very often with an exam in the hair. And if a doctor didn't learn that, they put cream and does nothing. When they come to our consultation, they do a hormonal exam, and you know, all the little things they are looking for that the normal doctors had not time to do, because they have to be very quickly. But our doctors, they have the time to see of all. And we want, you should have something like that here.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to thank you guys for having me here to unwed mothers. When I was volunteer at a Hope of Northern Virginia in the 90s, and we had somebody, and we would want to have them come to a doctor. And I remember your name, as I believe there were a couple doctors that we could send people to. And it was so wonderful to have that. So I think just by your presence and willingness to do that and to make that known to all the counseling centers is a remarkable addition to the community to know that that exists. And for me, that was very important because you know what? In my occupation, I had to make the decision whether I would counsel or I would write out a slip to say, you can go have an abortion. But I felt very strongly that someone needed to be talked to first. So I had to make the decision that I would not sign that. And so I was, anyway. So this is very important that the word gets out that there are people like you guys that are doing this, and we need to get that word out more, because I don't know that it is. And so nurses that are on the line and they want to really support you, it's so good to know that you stand strongly for that. And if there's some way, I'll be thinking about that, if there's some way that we can keep doing that, then, that's wonderful. So thank you.
Oh, please, you're welcome. We're very grateful. One of the blessings here is that I think Dr. Jérôme's presence has inspired a whole generation of healthcare professionals. So, and I'm speaking for my friends, my partners. We are a full-service OB-GYN practice, meaning we see insurance patients. And with healthcare changes and all the craziness, we are grateful for every person who comes and supports us with insurance, without insurance, but with insurance also. Because Danny and Marie and Miriam and I, we're trying to build a real light on a hill, a place where we provide excellent surgery, excellent medicine. They talked today about the time that you can measure love by time given. And when you don't get paid for, because you don't do sterilizations and every other things that people, your support, you people out there who drive from Dumfries and West Virginia and Centerville, we know that you're bypassing really good doctors before coming to us. And in order for us to stay alive and afloat financially, we absolutely need you as patients, and we're grateful for that. We also see the underserved, right? We try to work with pregnancy centers. Dr. Anderson is very closely associated with not only good surgery, but our perinatal hospice, the other side of this equation, where you accompany people when their child may live a few seconds or moments after the cord is cut. And so this idea that, I've been toying with the idea of a Birthe Lejeune fellowship, where you actually try to inspire. Right now, one of our doctors had a lovely, beautiful, smart PA student from James Madison. She was in our office. She's in our office for, I think, the next few weeks. They're coming from all over. They've come from the Mayo Clinic. They've come from in-state. They've come from Georgetown. Because they want to know why, in this healthcare craziness, most of the time we're still pretty happy and very, very pleased that we are a part of this. And I think it's part of what Dr. Jérôme is trying to inspire us to do. So I'm grateful for your kind words. We are definitely building and flying an airplane at the same time. Without your support, without families that I can look around here, David's family, all of you, the docs and the midwife and the staff, Sharon and the gang, we are so grateful for your support of us and this ability to inspire us to continue this fight. So I am grateful. Long answer. Yes, sir.
Yes, please, Madame Lejeune. I'd be interested to know, what are the sources of support for your husband's institute in France? For example, are you receiving any government support through the Ministry of Health, or what is the degree of support, if any, from the Catholic Church in France to his effort, to his legacy?
The government, no. The Catholic Church now, yes, now. We have now good bishops. At the time they voted the law of abortion, the bishops, I don't know, they demissioned. They didn't help us, they didn't do anything. But then we got much help from the Pope John Paul II. And now we have good bishops. They don't help us with money, but they help us with support. But the government, no. They still think that children with Down syndrome, they shouldn't live. And they don't see any reason to help us with anything.
Madame Lejeune and Dr. Matowski, do you see any difference with the new generation of parents that are wanting to have a different path in choosing life first? That there's so much more information, I would say so too, for our generation. We're much more we know more of the evil of abortion, what really goes on. They can't really, make up stories anymore. Have you been able to see that it's getting better? Or it's kind of the same, at least on the statistics point of view in Europe, doesn't sound good, or the US. I'm from Mexico, and I work a lot with the Latin American youth, and I see a lot of hope in Latin America. We do have laws that allow abortion for the reason of a baby coming with some kind of sickness, which is, again, one of the first things that should not be happening. We should protect them first. But do you see some beacon of hope with these new generations?
Yes, of course. Just about this young girl. Her mother has been walking she's from Mexico, and his mother has been walking with my husband in Paris several years. So she knows many things about Down syndrome. And her family is between them, who know that you have to hate the disease and love the patient. And it's very important because the patients, they feel if you like them. They see in the first moment when they come, oh, they like me. So it's more easy. And what did you ask for more?
If you see a difference with this new generation of parents that are becoming more pro-life in France or not?
No. I think you ask if the parents are pro-life of these children. Yes, of course, because they love their children. But I think they have many other things they are not what you call militant pro-life. They think, yes, my child is wonderful, I love them, but they are not, they have so many other troubles, so that's not the people who is going in front to fight for pro-life.
I think, and once again, I'm speaking for the people that I work with. We talk about a womb with a view. We talk about how for 40 years we have much better ultrasounds. But the world's gotten harder, remember. So now they see it and they still want to terminate, they want to report it. And so the younger generation obviously is looking for more. Because we're at the point, I believe, that the world is so devoid of meaning because we're texting and we're Facebooking and we're, 30 seconds you got, 4 seconds you got. My son's, I think it's 8 seconds, right? However, because of the quality of the relationships, the people I work with, we see many young people who travel distances because they want a particular way of approaching the person. Integrated, holistic, please listen to me. Remember, we're in this generation of, listen to me. And as we've tried, this younger generation truly believes that they want more from life than be done with it. And they're looking for this. And so a lot of the time when Dr. Anderson's talking and counseling about, and Mrs. Lejeune talked about it this morning, this is your daughter. This is not your child with Down. This is your son. I remember a case of a lawyer in our practice, a wife whose husband was a lawyer. They found out at 22 weeks that they had a trisomy, but the baby had multiple anomalies, and the father wanted to terminate that pregnancy. And the mother was, what? No, what do you mean? We just found out. I said, listen, give it a week or two. This is your child. We'll accompany you as best we can. And the whole team was involved. Everybody was a part of this. And he threatened, he kept threatening us with letters that he was going to sue us because we were traumatizing his wife. But his wife kept saying, no, I'm good for another week. I want to still be with my child because I know when I cut the cord, it may not be with us. This is different than Downs, but it's a very sick child. Well, when we delivered that child, and he was in the room, the father was in the room, silent up at the head of the bed, and we delivered this little one, cut the cord, and we said, Daddy, here is your son. He gave that cry, that deep-seated cry of a father who was given his sick son. And a few months later, we got a little note saying, dear team, thank you for introducing me to my son. This was somebody that he didn't want to deal with, didn't want to touch, didn't want any of that. And we're not seeing a change in that aspect. We're also seeing a change in the young folks. They're more willing to work with these conditions. Not across the board, but definitely. And then we try to provide them mentors, people who've done it already. Like there is hope. There are doctors who will really care for your children. There are doctors who will walk with you pediatrically and as their teens. And so that's been one of the values of, I think, what the Paris Institute has. But it's a good question, and it's a hard question, because the world's getting harder and harder. But I think we've been doing it a long time, and people have been hurt over and over and over again, and we don't want to do that. We want something different than that. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. First of all, I want to thank Madame Lejeune and your husband, because he gave my parents hope with my brother. I came from Maryland. I found out about this surely by accident because I opened my big mouth. My brother's older. He's getting into the phase of getting old and probably, accelerated senility.
Yeah.
And, we're at a time where there's more information now for the younger generation so that Downs people, disabled people in general, can keep up with so-called normal more because there's more information out there. On the other hand, we also have the issue of mercy killing, which I guess goes kind of hand in hand with eradicating Downs. I tell people we should make a monument to Adolf Hitler because he was way ahead of his time. I'm scared for my brother because I don't know, he will need help. My mother and I can't do it on our own. And we're afraid to take him to a hospital in Maryland because we don't know what's going to happen to him. So what is your foundation doing for the older people that have Downs that have
Yes,
not adapted as easily?
We have patients who are 70 years before they died very early. And our patients, they have a little book where they write all what they want to eat, all what they want to eat, to drink, to see, to read, to all things. So the day where the parents die, the people who take care of them know exactly what they want, so they do not have the difficult with them. It's probably difficult to explain. That's a book of life.
Yes.
Where they note all, so the people who take care of them when the parents die, they know all about what
The
color
care.
do you like, what do you,
Yes.
what time do you want to eat, and what do you
You
want
get to know the person.
Yes, so they have all informal decision.
What I find fascinating, what was incredibly encouraging to us, is that one of the Jérôme Lejeune Institute is not only the highest level of research, but they provide care for these folks, meaning they're seeing people. In fact, I just heard 2 years ago, they started a geriatric division for caring for the older person with Down syndrome. They presented a slide today where they have 12 different subspecialties: pediatrics, endocrinology, pulmonology, neurology. In fact, I don't think she's here tonight, but one of my colleagues in Paris, she studies the neurobiochemistry to understand the patient. Meaning, this center is not just like research and kind of, they actually are, and in that, they do dietary counseling. They're talking about programs of how you get people the resources, the transportation, the living conditions. Jérôme Lejeune Institute, Paris, France. That was something that blew my mind and blew our mind. Because here we are trying to do the best in utero because we're OB-GYN. Marie and Danny and us, and all of us. But this institute is encouraging all of us to look at this question because they are growing older. And in this country, you have to go to a center sometimes where they're not considered fully a part of, like, expendable. And if there was a way in the future that we can collaborate to bring this here, it would be wonderful to be able to offer that, because I think their model in Paris treats the Down syndrome adult like an adult, like an internal medicine practice. You just happen to have an extra chromosome 20. And this idea of Down syndrome folks seem to get breast cancer. Down syndrome folks seem to, there's some Alzheimer's issues. Dr. Jérôme Lejeune talked about the biochemistry. Some of his articles on Down syndrome are, even today, are some of the best I've ever read on the mechanism. They just don't leave it at the science. They want to do the practical aspect. And they're doing this in Paris, where they're not getting a whole lot of help. So it's a great question, and it kind of inspires us to want to kind of push that a little bit.
Bonsoir, Madame. Dr. John, it's wonderful to be here with you this evening. I happen to work in the pro-life movement here in the United States. I am the state president of our state pro-life organization. I was fascinated when the news from Iceland broke in the media here, when the media was discussing what they were doing to Down's children before birth, to the mothers of Iceland. I was deeply troubled. I happen to have had an abortion myself, so I'm always sympathetic that the abortion experience is so hard on the mothers and obviously deadly to their children. I was interested if you could tell us, was there any particular reaction from the public in France when the news broke? Because here, when the news started to come out, the general media was very negative, or very, rather, shall I say, supportive of what the government of Iceland was doing to these babies. But the disability rights groups that exist in the United States were very vocally opposed to what Iceland was doing. Are there groups like our disability rights groups in France who spoke out when the news broke in France, or was it even discussed?
In France, they used the Down syndrome to get the law of the abortion, because the first proposition of law who was not voted, that was when Pompidou was president. And I know he said to his minister, oh, they want the abortion, try to find something that will not be voted. But that was that a woman can have an abortion in the only case, and never more if there is a risk that the child will be Down syndrome.
So now in France, the subject is not even discussed?
No, they have still, they talk very, very much, we will do better for all handicapped, but that's not handicap mental, that's handicap physique. They do many things for people who had no arms or legs, but not for mental. What happened, they are home for children with mental handicap. You have Jean Vanier. Did you hear about the Arc? The Arch. That was in Canada, a man from Canada. And he said, I'll take care of build houses for, yes. He's known in the world of all. Jean Vanier.
Yes.
Yes. Do you know?
Yes.
And he is special for old handicapped. And they are very happy there. Even of course, they are unhappy when the parents go away, but that's normal for all young people. So he understands to let them walk. There's something who walking with the flowers or with poterie, and they are very happy.
It
That
recognizes
exists
their
in France,
humanity.
and he did it in a little overall.
Merci to your legacy. All of us in the movement revere and honor the memory of your dear husband. Thank you for coming this evening.
But if there's no hope, that's therefore I am happy that the research is not only fundamental. Now there's many clinic research, not only in our institute, but overall in other countries. So I think that that's going not very quickly, but all research, that's a long way. But there is a hope each day for that, and I'm sure that one day we will find something.
I think we're going to take one more question.
Thank you, Madam Lejeune, and thank you, Dr. John Matowski. My name is Matt Hassan, and one of the I have a little brief comment and then questions directly related to my comment. what it strikes me is that what you all are communicating us is there's two pieces to the care of Downs. And I have to say it's very much hope and accompaniment. And I can't speak directly regarding Downs, but I have had my own experience with a devastating disease and understanding those things. When parents find out their children have Down syndrome, they need hope. They need hope. They need to know they're not alone. It's the same thing as with cancer. You need hope that there's something to be done, there's something to be alone. So my questions are basically two. In the area of hope, and I can speak a lot about cancer and hope, but in the area of Downs, where are we with the actual treatment of Downs itself? That's the first question. And the second one, and I think your center is the example by which the model which needs to be built here of that accompaniment through all the stages of Downs and life in general. What can we do here in getting that message out and building that here? Obviously, we can put money there, we can throw money there, but what's the smart way and the right way to approach building such a system here? Thank you very much.
Can I help you,
Yes,
Mrs.
yes.
Lejeune? Hi. Thank you.
The director for the foundation.
Yes.
And we have a doctor from the institute who better than I can answer the medical question.
You so it's so right what you are saying, Monsieur. We need hope, and in that way, in fact, I see two roads, mainly two roads. First road, it's to care. Because, you know, Down syndrome people have a lot of comorbidities. And we can help a lot Down syndrome young people and adults and oldest by taking in charge their comorbidities. For example, today we are doing in France a program in the institute with apnea. You know what apnea is? And we are trying apnea to detect apnea of the, when you sleep, of the sleep, on very young children, 2, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. And we know perfectly well that when we detect apnea, we have good means to care the apnea of the young babies. And so the detection of apnea immediately can help young people to be much more dynamic, to have much more energy, to develop their own capacity in cognition. You know, and it's important for Down syndrome baby to have the most capacity, ability to learn, to be open to life. So such program, simple program, can considerably help Down syndrome babies. 40% of Down syndrome babies have apnea when they sleep. So you know immediately you can have a good answer, a positive answer. Another way to hope is naturally to cure. It's to try to understand where are the dysfunctionment, you say that in dysfunctionment of the cognition. Where in the metabolism, the causes of the dysfunctionment of cognition. And today we have several way, genetic way, where we try to inhibit the genes candidate of the disability, and we are trying on 4 or 5 of these genes with molecules, with active molecules. We are sustaining 4 programs on molecules, active molecule, to inhibit some genes. And we are also trying to work on the brain. What are the difficulties of the cognition, of the behavior in the brain of a Down syndrome person? And on that way also, we are doing a lot of progress. For example, we know today that Down syndrome persons, when they are adults, when they are older, they have more Alzheimer's disease than the other of the population. Because the gene of the Alzheimer's disease is located on the chromosome 21. Is located on the chromosome 21. So in a Down syndrome, for Down syndrome persons, we have no 2 chromosome 21, we have 3 chromosome 21. So you have more opportunity to develop Alzheimer. It's very interesting, because working on Alzheimer, we can help a Down syndrome person, and working on Down syndrome disease, we can help Alzheimer. And today we are working a lot on cross-fertilization, research on different diseases, and that is going up. It's really a very large road of hope, because we have no much money on trisomy 21 for the research, but we have plenty of money to research on Alzheimer, you see. So really, you have something going in the good way for positive results. So it's 2 roads of hope, and I would like to add the 3rd roads of hope. Naturally, it's love. More we will love Down syndrome persons, more we will help them, more we will give them energy, positive mind to help them and to contribute to their well-being. And today, if I can say something positive in France, but also I know in other countries, Down syndrome persons, when they are born, they are much more respected than before. Today, it's frequent to have a Down syndrome person on TV set, in a movie program, in the restaurants. You have restaurants in France, in America, everywhere, where it's Down syndrome person who cook, who serve in the room. So you have much more positive integration of Down syndrome persons, and that it's very interesting, because you have more visibility of what a Down syndrome person is, the richness of a Down syndrome person, and much more integration in the ordinary mind, you see, and that is positive too. So we need the help of searchers. We need the help of clinicians, but we need the help of Down syndrome persons, because they are the best ambassadors of their sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Terry is the executive director of Jérôme Lejeune Foundation in France and has been doing wonderful work in support of their mission. Madame, we really appreciate all you have done tonight for us in educating us, in inspiring us. I think my big takeaway personally is that through hope, through accompaniment, and through love, we can see the progress that is being made in research and in care, and thus, just what Thierry said, they will promote, we can help promote the life of an individual with Down syndrome, and so that they can accomplish everything that they have the potential to do. And that is a wonderful, beautiful blessing from God, I believe. Madame, we have for you some wonderful gifts that thankfully the ladies in my office chose this, so they have a good touch. But we have a personalized Madame Lejeune bag for you. Maybe it will be a popular fashion item going forward in France. We have a nice statue of the Holy Family and some other personalized items. So